We're going to start with looking at what's making headlines on the dailies. And we start off with the Standard, where the headlines is Jubilee Shocker. Jubilee Shocker. And this, of course, is what is expected to go down. This is likely to be a very, politically turbulent week, particularly in Jubilee Party, given some of what has been happening and bolstered by a formal coalition with Kanu and with other parties in the wings. Uhuru moves to stamp his foot as a Senate with today's State House meeting, as Murathe claims that it's time up for Majority Leader Murkomen and Kihika, that is Susan Kihika, who is the party whip. And this, of course, is on the backdrop of that letter to the Registrar of Political Parties confirming the coalition agreement between Kanu and Jubilee. So, of course, the timing of this is rather, suspect in terms of what's happening. The president has called for a meeting today to meet senators, and it is suspected, it is suspected that part of what they would like to do is to discipline what they are calling errant leaders who have not upheld their political desire of the party. And those who might be targeted are the Senate Majority Leader, that's Kipchumba Murkomen, and Susan Kihika, who are apparently allied to the Deputy President. And this, of course, is something we're waiting to see how it's going to play out. And according to Murathe, who, of course, many would say he speaks on behalf of, or not on behalf of, but when he speaks, then you certainly would wonder if the president's voice is in it. And Murathe saying that one of the things that they would like to do is to discipline those who've not been towing party lines, and that is none other than Kipchumba Murkomen and Susan Kihika. Now, it is thought that Pogisho is likely to take the position of Murkomen, and Irongo Kangata, likely the senator from Murang'a County, likely to take the position of Susan Kihika and be deputized by Johnston Sakaja. Is this going to be? Well, time will tell. We shall wait to hear what that is all about. But political pundits, of course, coming out to give their predictions of what they think is going to be taking place. Ambrose Weda, Kenon Weda, is going to be joining me later on, and he is one who is well versed in matters politics, and being a Jubilee member, he's going to be giving us his 2 cents and 2 thoughts on this later on. But what are your thoughts on that? Remember, that question that we're asking this morning is based on this particular letter that has been deposited with the Registrar of Political Parties confirming the coalition agreement between Kanu and Jubilee parties. So, would like to find out what your thoughts are on that. Are we returning to a Kanu leadership? That's a discussion that we're going to be having as we go along. Let's look at other stories that are in the Standard this morning. On page 2, some good news, and we have freed Italian aid worker returns home on special flight. Now, many of us will remember that this Italian worker was taken hostage in northern Kenya, and for a long time, nobody knew if she was still alive or not. But the good news is that Silvia Romano, an Italian aid worker who was kidnapped 18 months ago, is now safely back home. And she arrived to a hero's welcome, being met by the Prime Minister. And even when she got to the city where she lives, literally there were bells and people standing on balconies to receive her. Of course, good news right there, but I'm sure it'll take time for her to recover from the trauma that she may have gone through. It'll take time to get her story of what actually happened, but we thank God that she's still alive and she has now finally made it home. So that's a story that you'll find on page 2 of the Standard. On page 2 still, there is why varsity staff may not get the 6.6 billion pay boom this month. We do know that teachers and government have had a protracted disagreement for the longest time ever, and it's mainly to do with income and wages, and there was a proposal and monies that had been promised to them, but it looks like it might not come out as soon as they had expected. We engage in negotiations with the Interpublic Universities Council's Consultative Forum, and so we only take seriously communication from that body. That is from Constantine Wasonga, WASU Secretary General. So find out what that is all about. And of course, this is on the backdrop of learning that is facing challenges with COVID-19 coming in, and the fact the schools are closed, and teachers have had to find new ways of engaging with their students and ensuring that, as per the Ministry of Education advisory, there is going to be no postponement of the exams as we stand. Whether that's going to be the case, that remains to be seen. I'm sure it is something that they will update as we continue to observe how things will work out. I've seen that there are some countries where normalcy is somehow returning. We have some countries that are opening up that had completely shut down and are slowly opening up. But for Kenya, of course, we have had a different way of handling COVID-19, not shutting down fully, but shutting down places where gathering would naturally occur, but slowly opening up. But that remains to be seen as to how successful it is. Let's look at other matters. Page 4. Budget 2020. Kenya digs deeper into debt to fill the massive gap in a 2.7 trillion budget. We do know that that's the budget that had been given, and now with the economy taking a further dip, we were already not doing well at all as a country, but the economy now taking a further dip, it has forced now the Ministry of Treasury, the Cabinet Secretary there, Ukuru Yatani, to take a loan and get further into debt. And maybe just to highlight some of the losers and the winners in this, the presidency is going to take and that's the executive, is going to have to take a change of minus 4.83 billion Kenyan shillings. You have Interior Security taking a cut of 4.91 billion shillings, and that is highlighted in the Standard. We have areas that are going to benefit from this particular debt, and you have development of ASL taking a 2.38 billion increase, early learning taking a 1.34 billion increase, health 21.32 billion. So that is highlighted in the Standard. I've only just given you a few of those that they've highlighted, but it kind of gives you an idea of how Treasury is expecting to spend that money that they're borrowing. Of course, that for us means that as Kenyans, we certainly are going deeper into debt. Remember, currently, as we speak, before that debt is taken, we all owe, I think it's over 100,000 Kenyan shillings, which we need to pay our back as Kenyans, even for those who are newly born. But this throws us further into debt. Again, I think important to note that going into debt is not necessarily a bad thing, so long as that debt is used wisely and used for what it's taken for. The issue is that sometimes these debts come in and the money is misappropriated and is not used for what it's supposed to, and as a result, we end up paying for ghost projects, for elephant projects that never ever materialize, and as a result, those projections are not, they don't pay off as required later on in life. Case in point would be, for instance, the standard gauge railway, which of course would open up many counties, open up many areas, but has that been the case? Well, not as yet, and we've not seen light at the end of that particular tunnel, so to speak. On page 6 of the Standard, we have matters politics, and we have that formalization of the relationship between Jubilee and Kanu. That, of course, according to the SecGen, Nick Salat, Honorable Nick Salat, he says that there is nothing new about it, and if you would read the writing on the wall, according to him, Kanu and Jubilee have been working together now for over 3 years, so it's really just formalizing. And of course, he's also not shy to mention that this is really just about power, and it's about, that's what political parties are there for. They negotiate for power, and if it looks like Kanu and Jubilee can work towards getting power in 2022, well, according to him, why not? We were concerned that our coalition agreement had not been deposited with the right office, and this is what they have done. And that, of course, is referring to that coalition agreement between Kanu and Jubilee being deposited with the Registrar of Political Parties. This shows intent that they are going to be working together as they work on a coalition for 2022. There's also that story, Uhuru moves to clip wings of Ruto loyalist in Senate, and that is to do with the meeting called by the president later on today, where some insiders have mentioned and intimated that this is the president trying to crack the whip. Remember last week we had a number of Orange Democratic Movement leaders coming out literally to negatively speak about Jubilee, and the questions were being raised. What has happened since the handshake as we know it? ODM has been literally speaking almost on behalf of government, but for the first time we saw them come out in parliament and speak against government. So this again could be part of an answer by the president to ODM, because they were claiming that the president was a coalition member and had agreed, to somewhat work together with ODM, but was not as vocal as they would have expected him to be in defending Orange Democratic Movement. So could this be it? We wait and see. Let's move away from matters politics. On page 7, we have COVID-19. 23 Kenyans die abroad as 191 infected. This again is numbers. 191 is the number of those infected out of the country. We have 86 in hospital and we have 4 in ICU. This again is obviously adding to the number that we have locally. We currently are above 600 in terms of the confirmed positive cases of COVID-19 on the daily updates that we get. And of course, this is after government also put in measures or things in place. Some of those locking down some areas, not just counties, but we know that now Eastleigh is on lockdown. We also have Mombasa Old Town locked down the same. Tougher rules for truck drivers also have been introduced, and this is highlighted on page 8 of the Standard, where we have all truck drivers from now must be tested and have what they're calling COVID-19 certificate. And this must happen systematically. They're tightening the noose on this, and this is for obvious reasons. Truck drivers, of course, traverse different counties and countries, and as a result, they've had to introduce measures to ensure that drivers then do not become the ones who are spreading COVID-19. So some of those restrictions and rules that have been introduced are, number 1, being tested 48 hours before they travel, and all truckers henceforth are supposed to stay in designated hotels as well. They are not going to stay anywhere, but they're going to stay in designated hotels and guest houses and not any other facility of choice. On top of that, testing centers have also been put in specific towns to test the drivers for the new coronavirus. According to the Director of Public Health, Francis Kuria, he also mentions that all truckers now have to be tested at least 48 hours before they take on a journey. And this is, of course, to ensure that they are negative. A COVID-10 certificate is what it's being called. COVID-10 certificate does not mean that you will not be tested or that you've not been infected on the way. So having the certificate does not mean that they're not going to be tested on the way. They may be stopped and randomly tested any part of that, during that particular journey. So restrictions and rules coming in. Testing resumes in Old Town, as cases in Old Town now are at a very high 226. That's on page 9 of the Standard. By end of last week, the area where movement have been restricted had recorded 73 COVID-19 positive cases. So we have 18 deaths in Mombasa. We have 4,726, the number of people tested for coronavirus since the mass testing began, and confirmed cases as positive is 73 in Old Town. Let's look at business, and specifically Matatu business. That's on page 10 and 11 of the Standard. We obviously, for obvious reasons, that there is no inter-county traveling right now. We have restrictions on borders. You cannot move from Nairobi to other counties. We have borders that have been closed. So one of the areas and the industries, of course, that has suffered greatly is the public transport industry. Matatus, as we know them here in Kenya. So they've had to devise new ways of staying afloat. And some of them, what they're doing now is transport of cargo. And of course, this has to be done in certain ways, but we do know that cargo is one of those that has been classified, cargo and food has been classified as essential services. Again, with government trying to have a different way of approaching COVID-19 for Kenya, not locking down totally everything and movement in every area, we have Matatus coming up with innovative ways of staying afloat. So do get yourself a copy of the Standard and see what's happening there. And they are saying that we are only offering parcel services, mostly food items, to people in Nairobi. To drive to Nairobi, we are cleared by the government as we adhere to curfew times and public health guidelines. Again, of course, time restrictions coming into place right there. But innovation is the key word right now. Innovation, innovation, innovation. Other stories, we have a health story there on page 12. Lopez patient in pain, living in fear without drugs. And also on page 13, autopsy for Keroche owner's daughter set for tomorrow. That's, in a nutshell, some of the stories and highlights of what you have in the Standard. You also have Matters Entertainment. Top acts find big money stage in online concerts. And this particular one featuring King Kaka. You have the likes of Akothe who've, gone online, literally, to first of all keep their brand alive, and secondly, to see how they can make money and stay afloat. Entertainment, of course, being one of the industries that have been hard hit by COVID-19 by virtue of the fact that concerts can no longer be held like we knew them before. But innovation, again, becoming the key word here for most industries and most businesses for you to stay afloat. So the entertainment world, of course, being one of those that has had to use online platform to have concerts. And I think there's been quite a number that have had very successful concerts. The only question, of course, is how to monetize that, because majority of the people who would want to attend this will probably attend it online, but the only thing that they're going to be paying for is the data bundles or logging in from Wi-Fi. But how does the musician now monetize that? Details of that in that particular story. Last week we also did have a number of artists come here on studio and tell us how they've had to change career from acting, from the theaters, to literally selling vegetables and food items to stay afloat. Let's now take a look at the Daily Nation this morning. And the headline of the Daily Nation is somewhat, related to that of the Standard, and Day of Long Knives for Ruto allies. Again, this is to do or in a follow-up to the meeting that has been called by the President this morning to senators, and it is said, it is touted that he is going to be dealing with Senate, starting with Senate and maybe also National Assembly as they deal with errant members of the Jubilee Party. So those on target, those targeted or suspected to be targeted is the Senate Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen and Senate Majority Whip Susan Kehika, who are known to be allies of the Deputy President. So is the war on? Let's wait and see. The meeting today is definitely going to be one that is going to reveal more for this. We see the picture of the Deputy President there with what you'd call a humility pose. But what is going on behind the curtains remains to be seen. Still on the front page of the Daily Nation, concern as 2 more die at home in Mombasa. Again, something else that is of concern is what is happening with COVID-19, particularly in Mombasa. We do know that there was a bit of unrest, particularly when Mombasa Old Town was locked down. Then there was also a notice given of mass testing in that particular area. So one of the things that has happened is with COVID-19, there are those who are refusing to come out to be tested or to get treatment. So increasing increasing deaths in coastal towns linked to residents' resistance to testing. Yesterday, Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe said some people were hiding their sick relatives and trying to help them at home rather than getting help from hospitals. Again, another challenge that, of course, has come out is the challenge of stigma. And as a result, there are those who are resorting to staying home and trying to treat their sick ones and loved ones rather than getting help from health facilities. Page 2, there's an interesting story in the Nation on how to prepare for a likely job loss. We do know that this is another effect, a ripple effect of COVID-19. Businesses are suffering, particularly SMEs and medium enterprises are suffering a big blow by virtue of the fact that they cannot stay afloat and are resorting to, having to let go some of their best workers. And COVID-19 continues to disrupt what one considered for decades a clear growth in the economy, but that has not happened. So there's an article there that gives you or prepares you for job losses, because that is likely to happen for many, many Kenyans. Actually not likely to happen, but it is already happening. Even big institutions and companies are already letting go of their best workmen because of how difficult times are. On page 4 and 5 of the Nation, you have matters politics, Murkomen, Kihika face the chop as Uhuru moves to cut off Ruto's allies. Then talks rife of opposition in new look cabinet. There is likely, or there is it's said that there could be, political pundits are saying that there could be a cabinet reshuffle, and this reshuffle might indicate, if it takes place, the coalition rumors that have been going on between ODM, Kanu and Jubilee, because they could reflect and bring in, apparently names have already been forwarded from those particular parties of people who the parties would want to represent in certain appointments by the president. So is this going to take place? Let's wait and see. We also have on page 5 of the Nation, Kanu-Jubilee seal poll post deal 3 years after working together. Again, that is the formalization of that coalition by depositing of that particular interest with the Registrar of Political Parties, which was done over the weekend. So, of course, that formalization being seen right there. Soaring deaths in coast, worrying and painful. These are stories, human interest stories of COVID-19. The Nation also have also captured that story of Miss Olivia Romano, the lady who had been captured and taken hostage in northern Kenya, but has now happily been taken home and has reached home safely. Kenya's creditworthiness drops due to increased financial risks, and that's an interesting read for you on page 10. And this, of course, is to do in light of the fact that we are sinking further and further into debt. Not very good news for Kenyans and the taxpayer, because at the end of the day, it is money that you will have to pay one way or the other. So that is what is making headlines. Of course, matters, floods are also being captured there. And many of us might have seen a video that was doing rounds of a woman who literally had a very close brush with death when she was trying to cross a certain river, and was rescued, literally escaping death with the skin of a tooth, and woman near-death ordeal after slipping into a raging river. Her story is captured in the Nation, and she gives her personal account of what happened and what possibly was going through her mind as she went through that ordeal. It is now 28 minutes after 7 o'clock right here on Morning Express. A quick reminder of that question that we're asking today, and would like to find out from you, what is your take on the formalization of the post-election coalition agreement